Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Ambassador Bell. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a very great pleasure to be here, and I also want to thank the Virginia Historical Society for the invitation. Very pleased to be here and to talk about issues of food and agriculture, and I will refer to the latest food crisis and a few other of the crises which we had lately. There's a lot of what I'm going to say I take from what you see here, the IASTD or ISTAD, as a sort of we call it in the acronym, the International Assessment of Agricultural Knowledge, Science and Technology for Development. And that's sort of what we call these days also the IPCC, and you know all what the IPCC is, the International Panel on Climate Change. And so we started something along the same line, but for agriculture and food. Which in some ways they're very much related to climate change, but also just about as important. So some background where we are these days, some of the global context, also recent trends in food production and the food issues. And then look a little bit what is the problem really. Look at future challenges, and then, okay, how are we going to be moving forward? Just to this AG assessment. It was co-sponsored by a number of UN agencies and also the World Bank. Very important to know that this was really done at the highest possible level of the agencies which we all know of. One of them, the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, was very much involved, which is really sort of the organization dealing with food and agriculture. But you can see that we had even the World Health Organization, because food is linked to nutrition and then obviously to health. A lot of what has to do with food and agriculture has to do also with education, so UNESCO was there, had to do with environment, so UNEP was there, UNDP because general development issues, and the World Bank, who is sort of an organization which is giving money to developing countries, or giving, mostly lending. And the Global Environmental Facility, which is funding a lot of environmental programs, and also again, here the link to agriculture. The study itself is also, I want to mention this, is very important because it was very broad-based. More than 500 people have been writing around the world for almost 3 years a report on agriculture. Why are we where we are in agriculture today? And what should we do in the next 50 years to meet the major challenges out there? So that's sort of what the job was. And the reports are just coming out right now. And if anyone's interested, there's a few folders up there somewhere at the entrance. You can get some of the summaries. If not, you can go to the website, which was indicated first, the www.agassessment.org. And there's a lot of reports, global, sub-regional, which are available now for people to read and to see a little bit, what are the key issues in agriculture and how should we move ahead. And the report, just on the last line here, was approved by 58 countries in Johannesburg in April 2008, which means that it has a very broad support from many countries. Unfortunately, the United States, Canada and Australia decided not to sign on, although they welcomed the report because it was somehow critical of certain issues like trade, subsidies in agriculture, which were going against the grain of those sort of countries' political leaning. So the background to this ISTAD, I guess, assessment. The stakeholders we consulted before, this was more than 800 people on the 5 continents. How can we, with new science, agricultural science, knowledge and technology, deal with reducing hunger and poverty? Because you all know that the problem of hunger and poverty are linked. It's not one or the other. They are, most of the time are there together. How can we improve the rural livelihoods? Because As you know, about half the people globally still live in rural areas. They're migrating into cities, creating another set of problems. So how can we actually improve the life in rural areas so that people actually stay there, have active and productive lives in the countryside? And this is something which is also valid even here in this country, in Europe, where again more and more of the countryside gets emptied, and that's not very good for the landscape. If nobody is there, it will go back to forest and to bush, and I think it has to be managed in some ways, and farmers are the best managers, I think, to keep out there. So again, we need to maintain a balance there, north and south. We want to improve nutrition and human health. The problems are very big, both in the north and in the south, where because of bad nutrition or undernutrition and overnutrition, people are killing themselves. And the interesting factor is that I think our children's generation will be the first one who has a shorter lifespan in America and Europe. So just think about, how much progress we made and now we're going down, and why it has to do a lot with nutrition. And also we need to facilitate environmentally, socially, equitable and economically sustainable development. I think agriculture is the basis of all the societies we know. Eventually they move on into more industrial societies, but agriculture remains really the basis. If there's no food, there's nothing. So, and think what you're doing when you get up in the morning, you have breakfast, you lunch and dinner, so what would that life be without food? So, and we have taken food for granted, so we have to get back to all this and try to understand where it's coming from and what we have to do to have food not only for us today, but for all the generations to come. Now, to improve this would be very easy if we didn't have the major challenges out there to which we have contributed. Climate change, for example, is out there, it's biting already, and that's why we have this food crisis, or food price increases, not fully explained by climate change, but certainly to some degree because of major droughts, and droughts going on for several years in a row, that yields, the harvests have gone down, while demand has continued to grow, and so you can see already some impact on, from the climate change on the food production. Population is growing, but not only is the population growing, people want to eat different. People want to eat more meat, which means right away more grains, which are going to go into meat production rather than to feed the people directly. And so the difference is huge there. And again, we need to think about this when planning forward. So what do we do? Can we actually continue the way we do things, or do we have to change? And the natural resources are shrinking because we have been actually eating up our capital instead of building it. The world, every year now, since they do this global footprint statistics, we have been finishing our capital almost a week earlier. So this year, or in 2008, we basically had finished with the interests of the capital in October. And next week, or this year, it will be sort of 1 week earlier in October, etc. So you can see that we have to change the way we do things so that we actually have, we can live the whole year from the interest. We don't have to go back to the capital to live the last couple of months of the year.